there, folk. In our previous episodes, we were looking at graphs, and we looked at all kinds of different graphs. We looked at graphs that were straight lines that started from the origin. We looked at graphs that were straight lines that started from somewhere in the middle of the vertical axis. We looked at graphs that had a horizontal line and then started to slope upwards. We looked at weird graphs that had a funny little curve. Okay, so we looked at all those kinds of graphs, and we even discussed how we got to those graphs. But the one thing we didn't place very much emphasis on were those little numbers on the vertical scale and those little numbers on the horizontal scale. And we call those little numbers, or those little numbers make up the scale. Okay, so let's have a look at what we're doing today. All right, we're going to look at reading the scale of a graph. Now, when analyzing a graph, we need to check the scale on the axis. The scale means the number of things that each space on the graph represents. Okay, folks. What we're going to do is we're going to spend a few minutes looking at different graphs. And we're not going to emphasize the graphs or concentrate on the graphs. We're going to concentrate on the scale that we're using, both on the vertical as well as on the horizontal planes. So let's have a look at our first graph over here. My goodness, this is probably the most common graph we can get. A graph which starts right here at the origin, a straight line graph, and when we draw that graph, we probably draw it quite easily with not much difficulty. Okay, and what is this graph all about? Well, when we look here, we can see that my horizontal scale is talking about the number of chocolates, and my vertical scale is talking about the cost in rands. So what we're actually doing is we've got a graph here which we've drawn, which can illustrate the cost of the number of chocolates that I'm buying. But let's have a look at the scale. We're going to start off by looking at my vertical scale. For those of you who used to do maths core, you would call it my Y scale. And my horizontal scale, you would have called your X scale. But we maths lit, and we don't deal with Y's and X's. In fact, those are like swear words to us. So let's have a look at our vertical axis. We can see we've got numbers here, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. In other words, the gap here is a gap of 10. 10 what? 10 rands. But we're not dealing just with these big blocks. We've got little blocks, a line in between. So the distance from, and let's get another color so we can see it so nice and clearly. The difference from that little block is going to be 5 rand. So each little block here is 5 rand. There's 5 rand, another 5 rand, another 5 rand, another 5 rand. So if I want to count in fives, I'm going to count 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. Do you understand? Okay. So my scale is saying each little block is a measurement of 5 rand. And it's important to know that so that we can read values off accurately. Now let's look at our horizontal scale. I can see here that the distance from this point, okay, and we're going to try and draw it over here, is a measurement of 2. But we also have this little distance from here to here. And obviously that's a distance of 1. 1 what? 1 chocolate. So each little block horizontally, okay, represents 1 chocolate. Do you see that? So by looking at this, I could say, okay, so what's the price of 5 chocolates? Well, the first thing I've got to do is I've got to find 5 chocolates. So find the number 5 on my horizontal axis. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and so this guy here must be my number 5. And what we're going to do is we're going to follow that line all the way up until I hit my graph, and then draw a line horizontally across. And you can see that 5 chocolates is going to cost me 25 5 Rand. Okay. Now, obviously, when you're answering a question like this, if the examiner says to you, how much do how much do 5 chocolates cost? I don't have to draw the line. Okay. I can just run my finger up, run my finger across, and get the answer. What I personally like to do is to use a ruler. Put a ruler by the 5, have it up, make a little mark where it hits my graph, and then get the ruler and put it horizontally and see where it hits the actual amount of money. So we could say to you, how much does 5 chocolates cost? Okay. Or we could say to you, if I had 40 Rand, how many chocolates could I buy? Now, we don't know how many chocolates yet, but we do have the money. So we're going to look at our money side, which is our vertical scale. We find 40, there it is. And so we look at our ruler, put our ruler down, or run our finger across, or draw a little dotted line, and we see it hits at that point. I now run my finger down, or put my ruler on this line, or draw a little dotted line, and I'll see it's at that figure over there, which, believe it or not, is 8. So I know that if I've got 40 Rand, I can buy 8 chocolates. See how we look at working with the scale? Let's have a look at another one. One a little more complicated. Okay, now look at the screen. My giddy aunt. Folk, now we've got lines everywhere. This looks so complicated. If I look here, this point over here is 1,000. That means that this distance, it represents 1,000. 1,000 what? Well, let's have a look at the name of our axis, and it says cost in rands. So this distance from here all the way down to 0 represents 1,000 Rand. Have we got that? Okay. But let's count how many little blocks there are. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 little blocks. So little blocks. So let's have a look here. If I've got 1,000 Rand and I divide it by 10, I'm going to land up with 100 Rand. In other words, every little block represents 100 Rand. You see how we did that? So we got the figure that was given to us, which was 1,000. We counted how many little blocks there were, which we got 10. We said 1,000 Rand divided by 10, which is 100. So each little block, therefore, represents 100 Rand. Let's have a look at our horizontal scale. Now, we've got numbers here, 100, 200, 300. What does that 100, 200, 300 actually represent? It represents bracelets. Okay, so this question is probably about, you know what, I'm going off to a shop, I'm buying some bracelets. How much is it going to cost me to buy so many bracelets? Or if I've got 2,000 Rand, how many bracelets could I buy? Got it? So we've got bracelets, 100 bracelets. So this distance from here all the way to here represents 100 bracelets. So I have 100 bracelets. How many little blocks do I have? Let's have a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks. Okay. So if I say 100 divided by 5, I'm going to land up with 20. So this is 20 bracelets, 40 bracelets, 60 bracelets, 80 bracelets, then 100 bracelets, 120, 140, 160, 180, 200. Again, you see how we're finding how every little block counts? So let's say, for example, I'm buying in bulk. Why? Because I'm raising funds and I want to buy a lot of bracelets because I'm going to sell them at a profit. So I go off to a shop and I say, I want to buy 250 bracelets. How much is it going to cost me? Well, the first thing we have to do is we've got to find 250 on my horizontal scale. So let's do that. I've got 200. We said each block was 20. So 220 over here, 240 over here, and here we got 260. Hello, hello, hello. We got a problem now because we haven't got 250. We got 240. We got 260. Where's the 250? The 250 is obviously in the middle of the 240 and the 260. So I'm going to take a different color so we can see this and say, well, then my 250 must be here at that purple mark. Again, I would take my ruler, put it down, and watch where it hits my graph, hits on this point. Then I'm going to follow all the way along to this line here. Now, let's see how much that accounts, or how much that costs. We know that each little block was going to represent 100 Rand. So I've got 2,000, 2,100, 2,200, 2,300, 2,400, 2,500 Rand. Ooh, impressive. Okay. Let's say somebody comes to me. I've got the shop. And they come to me and they say, hi, sir, I got 1,200 Rand. Here's my money. Wow, I want to buy as many bracelets as I can. How much is it going to cost me? Well, if we're using the graph, we're going to find 1,200. 1,000 is over here, 100, 200 there. We would put our ruler down, see where it hits our graph line, and then go drop a vertical line. We know each little block represents 20 bracelets, so I've got 100, 120 bracelets. Okay? Do you understand the importance of scale? Folk, that is so important that we understand that. Let's have a look at another example quickly. Okay. Now, here's an example, got a weird graph, a weird looking thing. There's no straight line this time now, we've got this curve, all right? And this question was actually all about a guy who's got a car and he's putting passengers in a car, a taxi driver, let's say, right? And he's hiring people or putting people in the car, and he wants to know how much he should charge every person. Okay. In fact, it's not quite a taxi, because a taxi sets you on a set figure, don't they? You get in a taxi and they say, right, that's 10 bucks, pal. You pay 10 bucks. Whether you're the only person or whether you've got another 20 in your taxi. I don't think you're allowed 20 in a taxi, but you get the idea. Whereas this example, let's pretend you've got a friend and your friend owns a minibus. And he's going to take us all off shopping, right? And he says, listen, I'm going to have to pay a certain amount of money. In fact, I'm not even going to take you shopping. We're going to go from Joburg to Durban. And I'm going to charge you. In fact, the petrol from Joburg to Durban is going to cost me 3,000 Rand. This car drinks a lot of petrol, okay? 3,000 Rand. So what happens if he's the only guy in the bus, okay? If he's the only one in the bus, he's not going to go to Durban. But if he's got one passenger and one person says to him, listen, I want to go to Durban, he's going to say, cool. It's going to cost me 3,000 Rand, buddy, to go to Durban. If you're the only one, all I want is 3,000 Rand, okay? As long as I get 3,000 Rand. If you're the only person, you're going to pay that whole 3,000 Rand. If there are two of you, then what we're going to do is we're going to share that cost. And we're going to go across here. And that's how much you're going to pay. Well, how much is that much? We can only tell if we understand the scale. So let's have a look at the scale. I've got 1,000 up to this point. So I've got 1,000 what? 1,000 rands. 1,000 Rand, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks. So 1,000 divided by 5 means each block is 200 Rand. Okay. Now, let's have a look at our horizontal scale. Our horizontal scale, big is 2. Okay, you can see here, there's a 2, here's a 4. But if you look, there's 2 blocks. And 2 divided by 2, you know, is 1. So each block represents 1 passenger, 2 passengers, 3 passengers, 4, 5 passengers, 6 passengers, 7 passengers, 8, 9 passengers. Okay? Remember our question was, if 2 people get in, how much do they each have to pay? Well, this line stops halfway or touches halfway between this point here, let's get a different color, between this point and this point. So we have to know what are those 2 points to be able to tell the number in the middle. So we've got 1,000, 1,100, okay, no, 1,200. Remember, every block is 200 Rand. 1,200, 1,400. So this is 1,400. This is going to be 1,600. Now, what's in the middle between 1,4 and 1,6? 1,500. Okay. So, we said we had so many passengers. How much is it going to cost us? What happens if we turn around and said, you know what, hey? How many passengers must we find if we only want to pay 1,000 Rand each? Well, we're going to find the 1,000, go across, see where it hits the graph, drop a line, and we'll see if we only want to pay 1,000 each, we've got to get at least 3 passengers into that bus. Again, the scale is what it's all about. Let's have a look at another graph. Here's a weird, funny line, hey? And what this basically is, it's money that's put inside a bank and put in compound into bank. You're earning interest, compound interest, and so my graph is going to make the curve. But again, we're not focusing on why that graph's like that. We're focusing on the scale. First thing is the number of years on my horizontal. So the distance from my start to this point is 2. I've got 2 blocks in between, so each block represents 1 year. So I've got 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Again, I've got 1,000 what? 1,000 rands. So I've got 1,000 rands, and I'm going to divide it by, I've got 1 block, 2 blocks, 3 blocks, 4 blocks, 5 blocks, divided by 5. Each block represents 200 Rand. So the question is, at the end of 2 years, how much money do I have in my bank? Well, 2 years, we go up here, and we get a number over there. We draw it across, and we get this point here, okay? Not quite in the middle, just below the middle. So we got 2,000, 2,200, 2,400. So it's above the 2,200, maybe 2,250. Okay, Rand, because not quite in the middle. If it was in the middle, it'd be 2,300. And if you get a question like this, and you're not 100% accurate with the 2250, because it's somewhere between the lines, your examiner is going to allow you to have a little bit of a leeway. So if you said around about 2,240 or 2,280, I'm sure your examiner would accept that answer. Why? Because you can't read it accurately off that graph. Okay, so answer the questions about this graph. Here I have a graph. I've got percentage and I've got time. Okay, now what we're going to do is this. We are going to say, let's pretend, and I don't know the question, so I'm going to make it up as we go here. Let's pretend that we're doing work. And as 1 hour goes past, we've done 10% of the work. As 2 hours go past, we've done that amount of the work. So we've got to then actually find out how much work we've done over a period of time. Not worried about the question, worrying about the scale. Each block, this is easy, is saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours. But the little bits in between, how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bits. So 1 hour is 60 minutes. We divide it by 5 and we get 12. So each little block, people, represents 12 minutes. Going up, we know that big block represents 10%. The little block, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 10% divided by 5 means each little block represents 2%. Do you understand how we're getting these answers? Okay, and again, it's all to do with finding that scale. I mean, you cannot answer questions on graph work unless you know how to read scale or how to figure it out. So our time's up in this little segment. We're going to take an ad break. Before we do that, let's just have a look at what we've done over this short few minutes. So in this segment, we have covered the following. We've looked at the scale on each of the axes, and we've also learned that unless we understand the scale given, we will not be able to read points on a given graph. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got another exciting topic we're going to look at. We'll chat to you soon.